Well, hello, everyone, again. My name is Avion Howard, and I'm a self-improvement content creator and mental health advocate with a bachelor's in psychology. And I'm also a blog writer for Evolve, and I cover student health, student mental health, and productivity. You can find me more of my work on Instagram at deluxe_evolution. And I'm your host today for another episode of the series, A Day in the Life of a Grad, where we explore the lives of various students from all types of different backgrounds and dive deep into their perspectives as well as their experiences. For those who might not have heard of Evolve, this is a mental health platform that is helping students improve their mental, physical, and emotional health by creating resources that support their overall well-being and desired life direction. And today we have a very special guest with a very diverse background, Alistair Kirk. It's great to meet you, Alistair. We have you on with us. You can feel free to introduce yourself and give a little bit about your background so we can get started.
Thank you so much, Avian. My name's Alistair Kirk. I just graduated from University of Toronto, Mississauga. I did a Bachelor of Commerce with specialization in finance and economics. I am from Ghana, West Africa. I grew up in Ghana till 19, and so I'm an international student who just moved to Canada in 2019. Been here till 2023, and I'm excited about this conversation and any questions you have.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited for the conversation too. Be an interesting one. We can start off right here with where you were. You said you were from Ghana, your hometown. So what was that like growing up in Ghana?
Yeah, growing up in Ghana, is very different from moving to Canada. So one thing I just want to touch on is what are called dual economies. So there's two extremes of people being wealthy and people being in poverty. Unlike Canada, where there's some form of middle class, the middle class in Ghana is not as prevalent, not as strong as the one in Canada. So fortunately for me, I would say that I came from a well-to-do family, attended an international school. So my life is really different from the life of an average Ghanaian. So I was lucky to be on that end. But it's I would say in Ghana, there's a lot of differences to Canada, especially in the sense that Canada also has a very diverse community. In Ghana, like you have a lot of Black people you're surrounded by. So moving to Canada and seeing a lot of non-Black people was something that was different for me and something that took some getting used to as well. So I'd say those are like two things I'll touch upon for now.
Yeah. Well, what was that like when you moved to Canada? Let's say like that first day when you first stepped foot in Canada. How did that feel like?
So like I said, I'm from a well-to-do family, so I've traveled. I've been to a couple of countries, so
Oh,
it didn't, hit me as hard as someone who had never traveled around. I've been to US, been to UK, and other countries around the world. But then what took me by surprise, I would say in Canada, was to see, first off, a lot of construction going on. I realized that the country is going through rapid development. Unlike times where I'd been to America, I didn't see as much construction, but here you see homes being built every day, condos. And when I lived in Canada, I realized that there's a lot of immigration and people from international communities moving in, which explain the reason for that. So that was one of the first things that took me by surprise. The other thing was just to see a lot of people from different backgrounds. I like compared to some states that I was in the US, I could see a lot of white people, but Canada, you see people from all walks of life. So that was something that excited me. I felt more at home than I would feel in other parts of the world. And how friendly and nice Canadian people are. I'd say there's a lot of similarities between Canada and Ghana, because Ghanaians are very welcoming, friendly, and I felt the same way meeting Canadians. So that was some good stuff.
I've definitely heard about that of how friendly Canadians are. But I guess that's true hearing that from you because I've never been to Canada. I've only been in the United States. I've been to different states and everything, but I've never been outside of the country. But that's interesting to hear that that's actually true of how friendly Canadians are. Do you have any like specific friendly experiences that you've encountered with the people in Canada compared to other countries?
Yeah, I'll just give an example, like walking on the streets in New York to walking on the streets in Toronto. Even though they say Toronto is Canada's New York, you realize that New York is very fast-paced, a lot of people shouting, yelling. But in Canada, you don't really encounter that. A lot of people are calm, people are, what should I say, more respectful and really trying to help you get around. Because when I came to Canada, one thing I struggled with was taking transportation. So getting used to like the bus system, the train system, and all of that. And I would always ask for help, and no one would shy away from me and would always provide support. So I'd say that's one of the examples.
Okay, that's really cool to hear. But let's get into the school aspect of when you started the school in Canada. So what was your school experience like in Canada, that undergrad experience?
Moving to Canada and starting school at University of Toronto honestly was really challenging. Um, I started in September and I was told about the harsh Canadian winter. In Ghana, on average, it's about 32 degrees Celsius and quite the opposite in Canada, very extreme cold. So it took some time to make friends. I was indoors a lot, especially when the winter came, and it was difficult to, do as well in class because always studying on your own, not having people to form study groups with. And I think that jump from high school to university can also be difficult. Even though I did a very rigorous high school program, it like I couldn't, nothing could have prepared me for the intensity of university. So I had a tough first year, but then in the first year summer, I I I took my economics course. I dropped it in second semester and took it in the summer, and I got a good grade going to my program in second year, which was commerce. And from then on, when I got into my program, had like-minded people around me, people who wanted to achieve the same goals. I would say university became a lot easier from then on. And in third year, took on leadership responsibilities and ran for elections in the student union and eventually got elected as the vice president external. So that was a huge moment in my life from then on.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about the union that you were part of, because I know that was a big thing that you were a part of in University of Toronto. So what was
Yeah.
that like? What was the union?
So the union represents 15,000 students on the University of Toronto Mississauga campus. So it's called UTMSU, University of Toronto Mississauga Students Union. And we focus on three things. We focus on campaigns, services, and also events. So events has to do with campus life. And as the vice president external, I dealt with the campaigns portfolio mainly. And some of the portfolios I had under me was fairness for international students, education for all, and providing affordable homes for students. So I think that's something that I was really passionate about because coming into Canada as an international student, I was well aware of the challenges people face being international and the astronomical tuition fees we pay as international students. In U of T, we pay 9 times more than the domestic students. 9 times more. So it's a huge burden. There's that misconception that all international students are well off, but then everyone has the challenges they face, and I was just trying to address that as much as possible. And with education for all, ensure that everyone, domestic, international, had affordable tuition fees to continue their university.
Okay. So would you say that that's like one of the biggest issues or biggest challenges for being an international student is, I know you talked about finding people to talk to and bond with, and then you talked about the fees and everything. Or else like the two biggest challenges that people face?
Um, I'd say those are, yeah, some of the biggest challenges, but then it differs from person to person. Like I said, not all international students are the same. There are people who come from non-English speaking countries into Canada and have grown up their whole life being taught in another language and are now being taught in English for very advanced topics. So that's very challenging for people of that nature. They have to learn English as quick as possible and find friends and, solve calculus questions and, explain how the economy is doing in English, or else they've never spoken English as well. So that can be a challenge for some international students as well. And apart from tuition fees, finding your group, and I'll just say immigration as well, just ensuring that you keep your status as a student, and also if you want to integrate in Canada after you graduate, finding your way to get that work permit, get that permanent residency is also one of the biggest challenge. But there's a lot more, but those are some of the few.
What would you say are, well, at least in your personal experience, some advantages that you've noticed of being an international student?
Some advantages, I'd say you have a global perspective and your opportunities are endless. So having like being an international student and being someone who's traveled to multiple countries, you realize that your future doesn't have to be where you currently reside. There are opportunities in other parts of the world that as equally as good as where you reside, because a lot of people think that the best part of the world is in North America and either the US or Canada. But then there are emerging markets like India, there's the Middle East, there's even Africa. So as an international student, you don't really place yourself in one location. You realize that there's endless possibilities for you to explore. And I think that's something I'm really grateful for being an international student.
Yeah, and I would say that's definitely useful to have when navigating the world, is having those different perspectives, being more accepting
Mm-hmm.
of other views of the world. Because I know that that's something that a lot of Americans like here. I don't know if you've noticed that before, but a lot of people are like very self-centered, or they
Yeah,
have like one perspective that they like to go down, and they pretty much closed off everything else. So yeah, that's something I just noticed living here a lot, is that people are very closed-minded. But that's
I
good.
I agree. I agree that a lot of people just grew up in the states they were born in, never leave the states they were born in, work in the states and die in the state they were born in, or province for Canada. And that's really different being an international student. Um, my dad has moved around like different West African countries from Gambia, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and now in Kenya. So I visited all these countries, gained perspectives from these countries, and realized that my life doesn't even have to reside in not only Ghana, could look at any of these countries or across the world. And another thing that I just wanted to touch upon that you kind of talked about is like coming here, I realized that back home, there was more of a communal living. And in like North America, it's very individualistic. People are focusing on themselves only. So that was something that was also a bit challenging for me because I'm used to being with family a lot, like extended family, living with my cousins, my uncle, aunties back home, and coming here where it's like very focused on your nuclear family and yourself rather than growing together as a community.
Okay. Well, also want to ask you, um, in your experience in helping other international students, what do you think that new international students that are fresh, that are just coming to their like first different country than their hometown, what do you think they could do to maximize their chances of success when moving away from that home country to go to school in another country?
If I were to give any advice, I would say find your community as soon as you can. Whether that be in joining clubs on campus. In my campus, we had the African Students Association, we had the Caribbean Connections Group, we had the Black Students Association, and these are people that have shared experiences or similar experiences to me. So joining these groups were really helpful for me to feel at home in Canada. So that's one thing I would give as an advice. Another thing is, to believe in the process, put yourself out there, whether it be going up for leadership roles, applying for job opportunities. You should never really feel intimidated because coming to Canada, one thing I heard a lot was the Canadian experience, Canadian experience. And being an international student, you don't have a lot of work experience. Now they're asking you for Canadian experience in addition. So sometimes it can be discouraging when you're applying for jobs because you don't have that Canadian experience. But there have been times where I've connected with people, shown them what I can do, and they give me the opportunity. So there's no issue with putting yourself out there and just seeing what the world has to offer you. So that's another thing I would say, take a risk and put yourself out there. And the last thing is seek support in your university because there are lots of resources that your university provides. I know in University of Toronto, Mississauga, we had the International Education Center that provides immigration advising, that has a lot of events catered for international students. And even in the Students' Union, we had the Fairness for International Students campaign, and we had working groups where international students will come together and help each other. So there's a lot of resources out there, people trying to help you. You just have to, reach out to them. A lot of people don't look out for these resources.
That's very impactful to have those different kinds of resources that can help you adjust to the new culture, the new school environment, just to help you have a better experience. Now, do you have any other future plans besides like the union that you're working with right now, or maybe you want to continue working with the union, or do you want to eventually maybe venture off and do your own thing? Maybe have your own like nonprofit for international students or anything? Any future plans regarding that?
Yeah, so currently I'm not working with the union. I ended work with the union in April, I believe, in April. And now I've just been studying for a certificate, so Canadian Securities course. I'm trying to go into the wealth management industry because of my degree. So applying for jobs. And in the future, yes, I plan to volunteer for any organization that supports international students. And who knows, maybe start something on my own that helps international students move into Canada. But then we'll see. We'll see how things work out. But yeah, that's some of my future plans.
Yeah, maybe everything's will work out with like you have your personal experience and your degree in the commerce, so you have a lot of experience with business anyway.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I want to end it off with a reflective question. So, if you were to give yourself any give your younger self any advice, what do you think you would say?
Yeah, I'll tell myself to be open, like open to new experiences and not to have any preconceived notion about Canada because I didn't want to come to Canada. Canada was never on the books. I wanted to go to the US. The only school I applied to in Canada was University of Toronto. So it was either I didn't get into University of Toronto, I'm not coming to Canada. Like if I didn't get into University of Toronto, I was not coming to Canada. So when time came and I got offers from the US, but University of Toronto just seemed like the best offer, and I came. I was initially not happy. I was a bit skeptical about the country and what it has to offer. But then everything has worked out really well. So I'll just tell myself that there's a lot of good out there. Don't have any preconceived notion about Canada in your mind and just be open to new opportunities because Canada has really surprised me. I think and I believe, no, I believe that Canada now being here is actually better for me than the States. So yeah, really, really enjoying my time in Canada.
I'm glad you have been. Well, this was a great conversation with you, Alistair, and I
Thank you.
appreciate having you.
Thank you so much, Avion. It was some great questions. Help me reflect and remember some of the times I've been through in Canada.
Oh yeah, and if you have any other social media that you want to plug or anything that you're working on right now that you want to get out, any last remarks, you can feel free to do that right now.
So right now I'm on a social media cleanse, so no social media. But then yeah, I just want to tell all international students that ever watch this, to not be scared of, reaching out to the resources that you have. And there are great organizations like Evolve Rate that are doing all of these series to help you. It's very important to pursue your goals, believe in yourself, because you'd be surprised what you can achieve. There's so many opportunities that have come my way in Canada that wouldn't have come by just putting myself out there and taking a leap of faith. So I encourage everyone to do that.
All right, beautiful last words. And I believe that wraps up this episode.
Thank you so much, Avian.